Erica wants me to start talking now. Hello, everybody. I'm Lauren Ornelas, and I'm the founder and executive director of Food Empowerment Project, and this is
Erica. Sorry, I'm getting everything set up, so I can't talk, really.
Whatever. We are in part 3 of a series that we're doing. We are in the process of celebrating my 30-year vegan anniversary, and just a reminder, I went vegan for the animals. But what we're going to be doing what we've been doing in these Facebook Live is that we have been going over some of the programs that Food Empowerment Project has. So the first one we did was on our work for farm worker justice, which included us talking about amplifying the voices of farm workers who, again, pick pretty much, unless you grow your own food, you got a farm worker to thank for it. And also the school supply drive that we do for the children of farm workers. Last week was about the chocolate industry and some of the worst forms of child labor, including slavery, that takes place, and about our work to demand transparency. And of course, we have a list of chocolate companies that we recommend and don't recommend, and 2 apps that people can download for free. Today we're going to be talking about another part of our area of work, and that is the lack of access to healthy foods in communities of color and low-income communities. And this is an area that is close to my heart because I am somebody who actually went vegetarian when my mom told me what the chicken was that I was eating. So I actually went vegetarian in elementary school. And over the years, I wasn't really able to stick with that because we didn't have a lot of money, and I pretty much ate what people brought to us. So I wasn't able to stick with being a vegetarian. And I guess that always stuck with me because I didn't want to eat animals because I didn't want to contribute to their suffering. But it wasn't something I was able to do. So fast forward to 2007, when Food Empowerment Project was started. I lived in downtown San Jose, and I worked in downtown San Jose, and I had 2 liquor stores across the street from each other where I worked and where I lived. And I had started to hear things about something called food deserts, and this is something that the USDA has determined that basically by proximity, how far is somebody from accessing healthier foods. Food Empowerment Project doesn't use that term, which I'll discuss later. But I started to think, here I am in the Silicon Valley, very, very wealthy area, not too many miles from where Adobe was based. Microsoft is based in that area. A lot of these very wealthy companies are. Do we have this problem here? And I should mention that this is also where Cesar Chavez got his organizing start. And for those who don't know, Cesar Chavez was a vegan. And what I decided to do was see if this problem was real in that area. Now, to be honest with you, of course, I pretty much knew it was real. But I know that numbers speak. Numbers speak to policymakers, and numbers speak to grant-making bodies. And we knew that there were some groups on the ground working on this issue. So I recruited about a couple dozen of our volunteers, and we physically surveyed over 200 locations in Santa Clara County. And we surveyed for fresh, frozen, and canned fruits and vegetables, as well as meat and dairy alternatives. And we put out our report, which is available on our website in both English and in Spanish. And we released our findings on what it is that we found. And I'm just going to go through and tell you some of what we found, what was taking place in Santa Clara County in California, a very wealthy area. You had some of the communities of color and low-income communities not having access to organic produce. And according to our researchers, it wasn't even statistically significant. And it's not because these communities didn't want it, because they did. It simply just wasn't really available. We found that there was 14 times more access to frozen vegetables in the higher income areas than the other income areas. We also found that some of the liquor stores, convenience stores, were actually labeling themselves as grocery stores. The USDA has this thing called NAICS, N-A-I-C-S, and basically it is a voluntary program that businesses identify themselves as something. So you could own a liquor store and say, well, like a lot of the liquor stores did in San Jose, right near the beer they have limes or lemons. And so they were able to call themselves grocery stores, just like a proper grocery store with the grocery cart would, even though they were not selling many healthy foods. We also found that a lot of the communities of color, which is predominantly liquor stores, the produce that they had didn't have prices on them. So whoever was behind the counter could decide how much they wanted to charge for something. So it could be $1 for one person, 50 cents for another person. So this is problematic, as well as the fact that many people who don't speak English are put at an automatic disadvantage from being able to find out how much something is because they don't speak English. So our report goes through all of our different findings. One of the things we didn't do is we didn't put a whole bunch of recommendations because we knew that solutions should come from the community. So we did have some recommendations in the back, but not many. We did highlight incredible work of an organization called La Mesa Verde, which was out of one of the churches, I think, Sacred Heart. And basically what they do is they teach people how to grow food and to grow food in their front yards to help inspire other people to want to grow food. And they have some amazing statistics on how important their work has been. One of the suggestions that we actually had to retract when we did our second report. What we did is we went back and we did focus groups in the most impacted communities, which all happen to be Spanish-speaking communities. And we worked with 3 community organizations, paid everybody who participated $50 for their time, and we fed them a vegan meal. The reason why we did this is because many times well-intentioned NGOs or government officials go in and they tell communities what it is that they need instead of listening to the communities. Community members' voices should be the ones that are centered. They should be the voices that are listened to because they know the barriers and they also know what some of the solutions could be. So we wanted to make sure that we had those voices out there, that we could amplify their voices basically. So we did these focus groups and we released our report, Bringing Community Voices to the Table, also available on our website in English and in Spanish. And some of the things that we found out when we did this was that many of the members in the communities were immigrants, and they actually ate healthier in their home communities than they did, their home countries than they did here. And the reason why is because they didn't have the same access to fresh produce. Instead of being able to cook things with fresh tomatoes, they would have to use canned tomato sauce. We also found that many of them shopped to multiple grocery stores in order to get the best deals. We found that the biggest barrier that people had accessing healthy foods wasn't as much the proximity as it was the cost. And this is why Food Empowerment Project immediately after this focus group started to push for, even more so, for living wages across the board. A lot of times I give this talk and vegans understandably are passionate and are concerned about what's happening, but don't know what it is that they can do because we don't really encourage people to, or white people to go into, well, anybody to go into anybody else's community, but we certainly don't want white people telling people of color what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so we find that pushing for living wages across the board, whether it be fast food, restaurant workers, living wages at the state level or the city level, that we need to all be pushing for living wages to create some type of equity. We know that a majority of locations that don't have access to healthy foods are people of color, and that's another form of racism that's taking place. These communities are the ones that are left without. And it's also a majority of people of color who work many service jobs as well as single women. So we need to, I should say single parents. So we really need to make sure that we're doing our part by really pushing for living wages across the board so everybody has equal access to healthy food, so that eating right is not a privilege, that it's a right for everyone. One of the other things we found in our focus groups was that in 2 of the focus groups, and again, these were the most impacted communities, we found that they had children who were vegans, and one of the other ones, her daughter was vegetarian. And again, we are doing this work because we want everybody to be able to not hurt animals, basically. We don't want people consuming animals because we don't want animals to suffer. But we also want people to be able to eat their ethics. And so if children and anybody doesn't want to hurt animals, they should have that right to not to have to, because there's nothing available in their community. So this was very exciting to hear that these kids were definitely doing their part. One of the things that we found out that was disturbing that we want to take more of a look into is how WIC handled these children. And that's that they felt that some of these children were too skinny, these young girls. And they wanted them to start eating things like chicken nuggets. And the parents would explain their daughter wanted to eat vegetables and fruits, basically didn't want to eat animals. And this wasn't really something that WIC saw. They really wanted to push them to gain more weight. So this is a huge problem that we hope to eventually take a closer look at. We also found that a lot of the people in the community knew that their partners or they themselves were what Food Empowerment Project calls lactose normal. So I don't know if I should go into that explanation now. I don't know if anybody's even watching at this point.
We're good.
But a lot of times, so majority of people who cannot digest cow's milk are people of color. And colonization is really what that stems from. As a very proud Chicana, I am Mexican, so I'm indigenous. And it's important to recognize the impact that colonization had on people of color around the globe, in the sense that, and I can only talk for my culture and my community, obviously I'm not talking for everyone, but just about our background, and that's that Columbus came over and basically they shamed the indigenous people for their food. They made us feel bad for the food that we ate, made it feel like it was subpar, and there was concern that if they ate our foods that they would become savages as well. So on the fourth voyage is when Columbus and his crew started to bring more animals over, including cows. So consumption of milk, of animal milk, isn't something that's really natural for our beings and for our bodies. And so what a lot of people of color, or people, anybody really, who can't digest the milk of another species, which is odd in and of itself, because that cow mama milk is made for her babies, not for human beings, is that we can't digest it, so they call us lactose intolerant. And the concern with that, a great paper was written on this, the concern with that was that it puts the onus on people of color, that somehow there's something wrong with us because we can't digest the milk of another species into adulthood, when in fact there's nothing wrong with us. So we call ourselves lactose normal. So in these focus groups, came out that yes, a lot of people knew their partners were lactose normal, but also a lot of people realized that soy milk and almond milk and such actually had a longer shelf life. And so it was much better to buy that because they weren't able to go to the grocery store all the time. It was much better for them just to buy that milk instead because they could keep it on the shelf longer. The recommendation that we no longer recommend, that we had put in our first report, was for people to buy their groceries online. And this is something that many people have seen as a solution, is to have people be able to go to a library and go online and order their groceries. But what we found, and when you hear me, hopefully it'll make sense to you too, is that a lot of people want to be able to touch their own food, smell their own food. You know, for me, I like my fruit really hard. My husband likes his softer. So everybody has their own preferences, and just like anybody else, they want to be able to go and pick their own food from the grocery store. So that was an interesting finding that we had, was that probably wasn't going to be as successful. We also found that a lot of the food that was being offered to them was moldy and was rotten, and what it made the community members feel like was that they weren't important and that they were worthless, basically, because nobody cared how they were eating. We also found that a lot of the farmers markets weren't exactly done at a time in which the community was best for the community members, and that a lot of the materials promoting the farmers markets weren't in all the necessary languages so for all the different people to know when they were and where they were. So we made a couple of these recommendations based on the feedback we got in our report. So Food Empowerment Project follows environmental justice principles. So we don't go into somebody else's community unless we're asked to. Now, we did Santa Clara County because I lived there and I was experiencing that, as were other people in the community. But we don't really go into other people's communities. And I had the privilege of meeting David Hilliard, one of the founding members of the Black Panther Party. And I met with him because I wanted to get a better understanding of the Black Panther Party's work and the free breakfast program that they did and all the amazing food justice work that the Black Panther Party did. And in our meeting, he asked me what it was that we did. So I shared with him our reports that we had done in San Jose and Santa Clara County. And he asked if we would do the same work in Vallejo. And Vallejo, California is not that far from Berkeley. It's in the Bay Area. And it is a very diverse community. Predominantly Black, Latinx, and Filipinx community members live there. And he wanted to see if this was an issue in his community. And, of course, it was. We have our report on Vallejo in English and in Spanish. Again, it's on our website. But some of what we found there, I think, was even more disturbing. One of the biggest shocks, to me at least, came out of finding out that Safeway grocery store... Actually, Erica, can you pick the Safeway leaflet? Safeway grocery store had been located in, you can cover me up, that Safeway grocery store was located in downtown Vallejo, and they were near a senior center as well as, just predominantly community of color living in the downtown area. When they left that location, they put a restrictive deed on their former property, preventing another grocery store from moving in for 15 years. That means that community was left without a grocery store. Children, teens growing up in that area never knew what it was like to have a grocery store in their community. We started the campaign against Safeway when we found out that this was happening in Vallejo, and we found out it was taking places in other areas around the country. We found out that a city council member in Washington, D.C. has been doing her part to prevent it from happening there. We have found out that it's been going on in Washington State, where they have a lease, and it's up to 65 years, and a grocery store can't move in unless they're going to be less than 5,000 square feet, which isn't reasonable. We found out this is taking place all over, and Safeway is doing it under the guise of saying that sometimes it's necessary. I spoke to one of their vice presidents who told me sometimes it's necessary to do this, and my explanation back was, of course, there's never an excuse to harm the health of a community. And we're not talking about them moving a couple blocks away. We're talking about them moving completely to another area. In Vallejo, they moved to a suburban area, which was miles away. Currently in Napa County, there was an earthquake, and the Safeway there closed. They have not reopened, even though the community desperately wants them to. We're checking out with an amazing rock star student activist in Richmond. We're looking at a location there where they're saying that it's not equipped for a grocery store, and so they want it to be a different, like a gym or something like that they're putting there, or a church in Richmond. So this is hugely problematic. And Safeway isn't the only one. We have a campaign against Safeway right now because we have the most information about them. But this is something that everybody can do again. Please sign our petition. Join our campaign when we go out and leaflet against Safeways. Contact Safeway and demand that they change this policy. It is inexcusable. They are absolutely limiting and preventing community members from accessing healthy foods when they deprive one from a grocery store. A lot of the community, the areas that we surveyed in Vallejo was frankly worse than anything I'd seen in Santa Clara County. We were lucky to also be able to work with Vallejo People's Garden, which we have beautiful pictures of theirs throughout, which our amazing photographer, Debbie, took the pictures of. And that brings me to some of what Food Empowerment Project sees as some of the solutions. At the end of the day, the food system was not made to really benefit anybody but a few to profit. It was not made for people of color. It's a capitalist system that was created. And what we need to do is get down to the basics. And the basics for all, of course, is going to be people being able to grow their own food and not being on a system that seeks to exploit and harm others. People need to be able to grow their own food. So many reasons. There's enough information out there about how to encourage children to eat healthier, to eat more fruits and vegetables. Again, for so many immigrants, for everybody to be able to put their hands in the soil again and feel that connection to the earth and want to protect the earth more. But like me, who's never lived anywhere that I've owned land, I've always rented, is that not everybody can grow their own food. So we see worker-owned cooperatives as another way to provide solutions. Because what happens when well-intentioned politicians decide Walmart should go to that community? What happens is that Walmart brings poverty with them. And any profits that go to Walmart are going back to Arkansas where they're based. What we've done is we've met with the mayor in Vallejo, talked to him about things that we would like to be changed and be done in the community. And he definitely was willing to listen to us. He was also willing to open his time to the folks at Mandela Food Cooperative based in Oakland. We love their model about empowering people and empowering the community. And their worker-owned cooperative model is really based on community. So it's people of color who live in that community who are going to reap the profits, make the decisions about their food, about where the money is going to go, and about how they conduct themselves. So this is what we are hoping. The mayor has agreed. In 18 months, we're supposed to revisit about trying to bring 2 worker-owned cooperatives into Vallejo. We're very excited that both the mayor and Mandela Food Cooperative accepted our invitation. And what we're going to be doing in Vallejo after this now is we're going to be doing little meetings around the community to find out what they want, who wants to be involved, who wants to be an owner. And I apologize, I skipped a step. After we came out with this report, we then followed up and we did 6 focus groups in Vallejo in different areas of the city. Now, we just did Vallejo because it's a more of an urban area, urban, people of color based, but Solano County is very white and very rural, so it's very different. So we did do 6 focus groups in the community. One was conducted in Spanish. We had a wide variety of people, including homeless members of the community. And only in one focus group did one person know what a worker-owned cooperative was. But once we explained to them what it was, everybody was very interested, very excited, and wanted to get started right away. They were also very excited about growing their own food and learning more about this. So these are things as well that are going to be worked on in the community. But again, listening to the community and letting the community put these efforts forward, we're just helping to make these connections. Although we are the ones leading the charge against Safeway because we know what they're doing is a nationwide problem, and it's a disgrace, to be quite honest. I know I'm missing so many other things that I typically say when I talk about this, but one of the things is Food Empowerment Project, again, we're a vegan food justice organization. This is an injustice what's happening to these communities, right? We know that. We also want people to lessen the suffering on non-human animals. We also know it's the right for everybody to be able to eat healthier foods, and we know that diets with more plants and less animal products is better for everybody. We also know that depriving people of color access to dairy alternatives is actually a type of food oppression or food apartheid, where what they're actually having access to is harmful for their health, and that needs to change. So our work is really working in this area because we do want other people to go vegan for the animals. And we want people to be able to be healthy and be able to thrive. There's no reason why people of color have higher rates of dietary diseases. I mean, that is because of racism. And it's a big issue, right? I know there's a lot of problems with the healthcare industry for everybody, especially black women. So there's a lot of issues, but this is one we feel we can tangibly try to change. And we need everybody's help in doing that. So we really encourage you to help on the Safeway campaign, help with the living wage efforts. And again, when we're talking about it being easy for people to go vegan, it's really important to remember that it's not that easy for everybody to go vegan. We want it to be because we want to lessen that suffering. We don't want animals to be killed, but we need to get there first. We need to create some equity. We need to create the ability for everybody to have access to fresh fruits and fresh vegetables and even meat and dairy alternatives. And they're not going to be able to go vegan until that is possible for them. So that is why our work is doing it not in a white vegans telling people of color what they should and shouldn't do and what's best for them. It's working within the community and listening to their voices and bringing that to the table. This report that we did, I mean, maybe people have a hard time hearing this, but one of the reasons why we create all of these reports is for those community groups on the ground who are run by people of color who know this is a problem and who are doing their best to change it so they can get funding, because this report says Vallejo People's Garden work is important. These reports talk about the fact that La Mesa Verde's project is important. And we have the ability, because we have some amazing volunteers, and Touro University, thank you so much, is crunching the data right now for our focus group report. But this helps them get funding for the great work that they're doing on the ground. And that's what we want to do. I mean, we need funding to do this too, but it all works together because everything's connected. So I'm going to turn to Erica, and she should be able to say whatever she wants to say as well. But really, you know, hoping people can help make this connection.
Definitely. I think Lauren covered everything. Let's find some questions. When you said you weren't sure if anyone was watching, everyone chimed in that they were watching.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
And thank you for having this talk. We have a few comments. Imelda, she says, been vegan for 12 years, but just started raw vegan.
Good luck to you, Imelda.
I'm a junk food vegan here. Moving on. They also say, oh my God, that's horrible about Safeway. I have been shopping there my entire life.
So, is that Imelda?
Mm-hmm.
So, keep your receipts. We are going to be creating a page for people to get, we call it our SOS campaign, Shame on Safeway campaign. So we're going to be gearing back up again, asking people to leaflet out front. Again, sign and share our petition. I don't know if people can see it, but we will be asking people to save up their receipts, because we're not calling for a boycott at this time. Safeway's going to need to hear from their customers. So if you're one of their customers, save those receipts.
And I added the link to the petition in the comments section, along with a link to our website that gives more information about the Shame on Safeway campaign. Moving on. Sarah says, thank you for doing this important work.
Thanks, Sarah.
Jessica says, a white-run Grow Your Own Food organization once told POC to grow food in buckets to go vegan because it is so easy. It's such a terrible thing to say to folks. How do we help white folks understand how wrong this is? I know.
Good question. Good question. And yeah, I think that we do the kind of thing that we're doing right now, right? That I think we need. What's happening to the animals is something that we all need to do, in my opinion, that we all need to do our best to try to stop, right? But it doesn't mean we lie at all. That's inexcusable to lie. It's not okay to lie about health impacts of veganism. It's not okay to lie about how easy it is to go vegan, and it's not okay to lie about what happens to the animals. And honesty and integrity are our best friends, because all of that is on our side, as is justice. And so I think that when you hear people say things like that, is, you know, direct them to our reports. We're a vegan organization saying this, you know. And again, I know that there are those people who will go on and be like, well, not everybody can be vegan just because they don't want to be vegan, and they will bring up this issue. But for those people who it truly is an issue for, we need to be aware of that. And there is some suffering. I mean, I know that when I had to go back to eating animals, it was incredibly hard for me. And so handing somebody who cares about animals a leaflet about how all these horrible things that are happening to animals, but when they go back to their community, they don't have alternatives, that's painful. And so that's why we are doing our best to change that situation. But the thing is, with access to healthy food, is there's no one thing, right? I mean, that would be so amazing, right? If there's one thing that's going to work for every community, but it's different in every community. And I think that what people can do is find those organizations on the ground in those impacted communities that are doing the work and support them. And more than likely, they need your financial support, because that's what all, as an organization run by a woman of color, I'll tell you, money is what we need to keep going. And that is something that many of us have never had our whole lives. And so it goes a long way. And so I thank you for being aware that this vegan group did this, and I hope you shut them down in the kindest way possible, of course. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we can do better, and we need to, because they know we're lying.
Definitely. Andrea, she says, this is an amazing talk. I'll share this to my Vegan Soul Squad page. Thank
you.
you. But that's nothing else. We got a lot of people watching. Does anyone have questions?
Anybody? Any more questions? Let's see. Let me see if there's anything else I forgot when I want to talk about this stuff. One of the things that we do is in Vallejo, we do the Vallejo Healthy Food Fest. And it's really fun, and we do it. This is the funny thing, is that we need to make, and I hope all the vegans out here understand my intent with what I'm saying. But when we do this event is done for the people in Vallejo. This is done for a community that is amazing, that seems to be overlooked by everybody, except for now gentrification is happening. But for people who live in the community, it's free. And for those who don't live in the community, we ask them to pay $5. And it's not because the $5 will help cover anything, but it's more because we want the people who live in that community to know how special they are and to know that this event is entirely for them. We have free vegan food all day long with all sorts of delicious foods, Mexican food, Filipino food. We have vegan. Erica, maybe you can share the video or photos from the event too.
Yeah.
But we have local performers, folklorico dancers. We have singers. Celebrating the community and all the different cultural aspects that make that community so beautiful. So we'll be doing another one in October. If anybody wants to donate, a lot of people don't want to donate to our food access work because they don't see it directly involving veganism, but it is. Everything we do is vegan. We're very upfront that we're vegan for the animals. It's just a different way of promoting veganism. I think that's what some people have such a hard time with, is understanding that there's not just one way to talk about veganism. When you were talking to different communities, there's a different way of corresponding about it. A lot of these people in these communities have so many family members who have died or had limbs amputated because of diabetes, or family members who've died young of heart attacks. So there's a different way of communicating. It doesn't mean we change who we are. We don't ever deny that we're in it for the animals. But it doesn't mean that the message they take away isn't about what's better for them. And that's okay too. Because a lot of people in these communities are never made to feel like they're important and their lives are important. And it's good for them to take away that message that their health is important. And of course, always good to remind everybody about animals and how they suffer and how we shouldn't have to contribute to that. So this work is about veganism. It's in a different way. It's not about just handing somebody something and thinking that they're going to be able to go back and have time to read it. They may be working 2 to 3 jobs. And their whole life is about keeping that roof over their head, and sometimes even more than feeding their families. Where we work in Vallejo, there's also a lot of people who live in a hotel. Everything they eat comes out of their microwave. This is just, it breaks my heart, and it's the hardest thing to do is to see that. And this precious little girl, who, I don't know where she is right now, this is how they live. And to anybody to have to eat everything that comes out of their microwave, that is a national disgrace that we're doing that to our own people in our own communities. So we have a long way to go, and we have to just be able to do this and promote veganism in a way that will reach and speak to people. And it's about the animals, and it's about their health, and it's about celebrating, who they are.
Definitely. So we've got some questions.
As I get all emotional.
I know.
But I'm sorry. I fell in love with this little girl, and she's just living in a hotel with her 2 brothers and her mom, and then they got evicted because her mom was on drugs and couldn't pay for the hotel, but it's not the little girl's fault, Anyway.
Yes. To lighten up the mood,
okay, good.
Andrea asks, what animals are on your dress?
Kitties. Kitties.
Kitties today.
Kitties today. And I should say that next week we're talking about veganism and animals. And I'll probably be wearing my shark dress. And sharks are my favorite animals. Yes. So I'll be representing my little sharkies.
So Jessica says, I have a million questions, laugh out loud. Thank you for this. Is there a comprehensive list somewhere of POC-run co-ops, urban garden groups, etc. that we can access?
Not that I know of. If you tell us what area you're in, we can try and look one up for you. If you're in the Bay Area, there's People's Groceries, there's Mandela Food Cooperative, Vallejo People's Garden, that come up to the top of my head right now. But always good to reach out to the one in your community.
Definitely. Jeff says, we can support FEP by monthly donations. The link is on your Facebook page, right?
Thank you, Jeff. Yes.
Yes,
And actually right now, in celebration of my 30-year vegan anniversary, we're doing a big push. We're trying to raise $3,000, maybe $6,000. We have a $50,000 matching gift right now. So every donation you make is matched.
Yes.
So thank you. We want to grow because there's so many things I want to do. And we just need staff.
She has a lot of ideas.
I know. Every week at least I'm like, Erica, I had this great idea. So yeah. But I'm trying to keep them slow because I know that she and I are already being worked a lot, and I'm trying to. I love her, so I have to protect her from working all the time like me.
Right. But I'm okay with it. So don't.
She gets it. And she loves it.
So Sarah says, I came on late, but I'm curious if you have spoken to the lactose normalcy and that non-dairy milk unavailability is harming community colors as well.
Yep, we talked about lactose normal. Thank you.
Andrea says, approaching veganism from a perspective of the people that need it is refreshing, as opposed to the it's only about the animals rhetoric from the mainstream vegan community.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's all connected. And I don't know, maybe I may go into this next week too, but I'll say it right now, is that, I mean, most of the people that I truly respect historically have been people who connect these issues. And that goes for Frederick Douglass, who is about his own liberation as well as the women's right to vote. Cesar Chavez in promoting, talking about veganism and farm worker justice. Martin Luther King Jr. and his talk about the janitors on strike, the Poor People's Campaign, the war in Vietnam, and of course civil rights. That these people got the connection. It wasn't like, I can only work on this one thing. It doesn't mean you have to sacrifice anything else. It's just recognize there's a connection there. When we're talking about, I did this interview and for a documentary, and it was like so hard to accept like the incredible racism and discrimination, and I don't even know, what do you call like constant police shootings of black men? When that is gonna stop, and we're gonna be able to have this truly compassionate society, that we have to recognize that these issues of oppression and the power at the top and exploitation and cruelty is woven in, and we have to be the ones to kind of untangle some of that and recognize that what's happening against non-human animals and what's happening against human animals is all bad, and we need to do our part. Now, again, for vegans out there and vegan organizations, I'm not saying you need to ever stop the incredible work you're doing for non-human animals. All I ever ask is this awareness about not saying things like it's easy to go vegan, not saying some chocolate is cruelty-free if it comes from slavery. I mean, there's these simple things that can be done, just like we feel that people who are talking about the environment can talk about veganism. I mean, there's something that we all need to give and take here, and to just do our best to be consistent. And I went on and on, sorry.
It's okay. It's good. We like to hear you talk. Jessica says, I run a large-scale event based on community access and veganism. How can I get involved in your work / vice versa?
You can email us.
Please.
You can email us at info, I-N-F-O, at foodispower.org. And again, our website is foodispower.org. It's available in English and in Spanish, and we also have veganmexicanfood.com in English and Spanish.
Yes. Essay or Saw says, how do we combat the implicit racism in dairy advertising when they say children will not be strong or healthy without milk, when most people now are familiar with lactose intolerance, lactose normalcy, in the majority of the world's population?
That is something that Food Empowerment Project, we have a big plan on this issue. We are trying to get funding for it, and it is something that we're hoping to tackle. And how we can do that is, my way of talking to people one-on-one always is to talk about colonization, and to just remind Well, because some of that comes from my desire for people to have more pride in who it is that they are. Again, I'm Mexican, and, you know, you don't really hear people talk really good things about Mexicans out there. So my whole thing is always trying to instill that pride in ourselves and who it is that we are. And so one-on-one, I always think to talk about colonization and to remind people about their roots and our people. And but on a larger scale, Food Empowerment Project is wanting to take a look at this. We're just hoping to get some funding. Yes. But we are going to be starting, next week we'll talk about what we're doing on Monday.
Yes. You might get a sneak peek later tonight?
No.
Maybe?
Oh, right.
Maybe.
Mark Hawthorne, who's my husband, who's a great animal rights author, he also thought that we should at least tease a little bit about what we're doing later on today. So
We'll see what happens later on. Fernando says, cats! Andrea says, I hope everybody tunes in for the shark dress. And I agree.
Thanks, Andrea. It's just about the shark dress. Not about anything about animals. Mm-hmm.
No, it's all about the dress. Ellie says, when will that talk be on veganism and animals? Will it also be on Facebook Live? Yes, it will. So next Wednesday, Facebook Live, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Same time, same place.
We'll be sitting here again.
Yes. So tune in. Let me go up.
Erica knows I just talked to her all day about everything. So.
Yes, it's amazing. Fernando says, you mean to tell us in 30 years you've never been stranded on a desert island?
Oh my God. Fernando, keep all of those for next week when we talk about veganism.
Yes, we want to hear the best. I don't know what it would be. I don't want to say excuses because that, I don't know.
It's the island. It's you're on a rowboat.
Protein.
It's like, yeah.
There's a lot. Justine says, going to start making a monthly donation. You are all amazing.
Thank you so much.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
Melanie, do you have any resources for being a more informed grocery store produce consumer in light of agricultural worker abuse? How can we find produce companies that treat their employees fairly? It feels overwhelming, especially given the use of contractors who sometimes work with the farms.
Right. We talked about, if you hopefully make a post last week's, but I will answer it. But we did a whole thing on farm workers. Oh, the first week we did it on farm workers.
The first video we did.
Produce is a tough one. And so what we do is we encourage people to honor the boycotts that the farm workers have called themselves. So one of them is the boycott of Wendy's, called by the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. They are asking for 1 penny more per pound for the tomatoes that they pick, as well as for Wendy's to sign the Fair Food Program, which they have, which includes like no harassment, sexual harassment against the women, just some basic things that they should do. Wendy's has not signed on to this. There's also the boycott against Driscoll Berries, called by the San Quentin farm workers in Mexico. So Driscoll Berries is everywhere. So they're asking those to be boycotted, and I always encourage you to let the grocery store know why you're not buying Driscoll Berries. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing is to go on to the Fair Food Program website, again by the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. They have a list of some of the locations that have signed, some of the companies that have signed on with them, that have signed the Fair Food Program. If you live in California, Swanton Berries, we highly recommend Swanton Berries. And then if you want to help by donating school supplies to our school supply drive for the children of farm workers, follow us on social media or sign up to our e-newsletter. We'll be posting information about that. That will be taking place in July, and we deliver the school supplies in August. When it comes to produce, it's very, very difficult. We encourage people to try to buy organic when they can, because at least that's one less bad thing to happen to the farm workers, is that they're not being doused with agricultural chemicals. Hope that helps.
So that's it. We've got Imelda says, great job, ladies. Look forward to future talks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Imelda. I love the name Imelda.
It's beautiful. Let me see. Yep, that's it.
That's it. So let's see. We'll give everybody another minute or so. We will remind you of the Shame on Safeway flyer.
Yes, please sign.
And again, check out our reports, all online. You can read them all. If you're like me and you're older and you like to read things in paper form, we should be getting more of these printed. Solano County Health Department is helping to print more of these because they actually use our report in the work that they do as well. So if you need one mailed to you, you can just let us know and we can mail you a copy. And we can also mail you Shame on Safeway leaflets. If you want to email us and give us your address, we'll mail some out to you to help spread the word.
Yeah. Also, our leaflets in general. You can go onto our website, and we actually have. Let me see. What is it? Where is it? Resources. Under resources, there's printed materials, and you can look and see what we have available, and then you can email us and let us know what you want.
Except for these reports, though.
Except for the reports, yes.
We ran out of these, too. You're like, really? You ran out, but you're holding them in your hands. These are like our only precious copies that we have left. Sorry.
And the Yabasta is, we only have like 5 left of those, and we will not be printing those again. So yeah, that's it. Let's go back
More
and
questions?
see. Melanie says, must have missed that last video. I'll check it out. I do live in California. I looked at the FEP list and was sad it was so short. So much work to be done. Yes, there is a lot of work to be done.
Is that, what list did you look at? The banana list?
She doesn't specify, but I think just in general there's a lot of work to be done.
Our chocolate list, we have a lot of companies on our chocolate list. But yeah, if you looked at the banana list, it's pretty slim. I'm in correspondence right now with another banana company to see if we will be able to recommend them or not, because bananas are really tricky.
Yeah, bananas and coffee.
Yeah, we don't have the bandwidth to do a whole list like we do for chocolate. Maybe one day, but
yes, hoping for that funding to come.
Like we're really pushing it. Sorry, everybody. It's just on our minds lately.
I know.
Because literally the past 2 weeks, every week I'm like, I have another idea. So
I know, so many. Grayson says, thanks for your intersectional approach to veganism. Your website is a gold mine of important info.
Thanks for getting it.
Yes, thank you. Caroline says, thank you for your work and for this information.
Thanks, Caroline.
And Melanie says, maybe it was the Immokalee list.
Oh, the Coalition of Immokalee Workers list. Yeah.
Yeah, not very many on there. I did take a look at that.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, everybody. Well, you know where to find us. And again, we'll be on next week for the veganism one.
Yes.
And anything you want to say about the veganism one?
No, just tune in. Tune in. And if you are able, please make a donation.
Right.
I hate asking, but
we do.
We do really want donations. But yeah, that's it. Oh, and then on, if you're not, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Erica's our
all that good stuff.
Our social media goddess.
Yes.
So whenever you're seeing anything or she's responding to you, it's this one.
Us. So.
Okay.
That's
cool.
it.
Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Have